Thank you very much. Let's kindly take our seats.
So between East and West, Nkrumah was very keen for African nations to build closer diplomatic ties with socialist nations such as the Soviet Union, China, and Yugoslavia, as opposed to the United States and its European allies. In 1961, the president of Yugoslavia, Josip Broz, was invited for a state visit to Ghana, and after officially establishing diplomatic ties with the People's Republic of China, Nkrumah even changed his dressing from the classic Western suit and tie to the Chinese Zhongshan suit, which was made popular by China's Chairman Mao. Nkrumah's unapologetic preference for greater African alignment with the Eastern powers would be a major cause for disagreement with the political elites in other English-speaking African countries such as Nigeria and Liberia, who preferred to maintain relations with the UK and US, as well as the vast majority of the former French colonies who preferred to maintain their alliances with France. This ideological divide would ultimately prove to be one of the biggest barriers standing in the way of Nkrumah's dream of a united African superstate. At a conference of African leaders in 1963 to establish the Organization of African Unity, Nkrumah proposed a formal declaration that all African leaders present would commit to the establishment of a Union of African States. But to his great disappointment, not a single attendee provided a declaration. Nkrumah would subsequently get into a heated debate with Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, who at the time was making plans for the creation of an East African superstate known as the East African Federation. Nkrumah also openly accused the leaders of the French-speaking African countries of being nothing more than puppets of French neocolonialism. As a result, the political elites in countries like Togo, Ivory Coast, Cameroon, Burkina Faso, and Niger would all begin to hold Nkrumah in contempt and begin working against his Pan-African project. But ever determined to make his Pan-African dream a reality, Nkrumah allegedly began sponsoring opposition groups in neighboring countries in the hope of overthrowing governments that opposed his Pan-African ambitions. After Ghanaian agents were implicated in an assassination attempt on Togo's president, Sylvanus Olympio, 7 African leaders threatened to break off diplomatic ties with Ghana. In 1965, a political dissident who had been trained in Ghana attempted to assassinate President Hamani Diori of Niger. Responding to accusations and criticisms of his government's support for this subversionary action, Nkrumah simply responded that there would be no need for subversion if the government of Niger would support the creation of a Pan-African government. Now with a growing list of both international and domestic enemies, Nkrumah moved to protect himself by tightening his grip on power even further. In 1964, Nkrumah decided to turn Ghana into a one-party state and upgrade his office from president to president for life. Nkrumah's proposals were presented to the Ghanaian people in a referendum, and according to the official figures, a brow-raising 99.9% of the electorate voted in favor of the government's proposals. As president for life, Nkrumah brought even more government functions under his direct control, from higher education to foreign trade, defense, and even lawmaking. As a side project, he also built his very own private zoo where he kept, amongst other things, a lion he received from Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, a hippo from President Tubman of Liberia, and a boa constrictor which was sent by Fidel Castro of Cuba. Ever committed to making his dream of a united African government a reality, Nkrumah commissioned the construction of Job 600, an office complex which was purpose-built for the 1965 Organization of African Unity Conference at a total cost of £10 million, which in today's money would amount to just over £165 million. Despite the growing national debt, failing state-owned factories needing raw materials, public hospitals lacking medication, and many Ghanaians queuing for food in towns and villages across the nation, Nkrumah believed that the construction of this building was a top priority, as it would one day serve as the government headquarters of Africa's united government. As usual, Ghana's state-owned media hailed the construction of the building as another great achievement, and Nkrumah himself publicly boasted of the state-of-the-art building, which had 60 self-contained luxury suites, a banquet hall capable of seating 2,000 guests, and a beautiful water fountain display. However, the OAU conference itself would be a complete disappointment. By 1965, Nkrumah's foreign policies had alienated so many other African governments that very few were actually willing to attend. A group of 14 leaders, led by President Felix Houphouët-Boigny of the Ivory Coast, decided to boycott the event in retaliation for Nkrumah's support for opposition groups within the various countries. Only 13 heads of state attended the event, and in the end, when Nkrumah asked all the attendees to declare their commitment to the creation of a united African government, not a single leader agreed to make a commitment. Nkrumah's popularity was now at an all-time low, and shortly after this public humiliation, the wheels were set in motion for his eventual demise. By early 1966, the terrible state of the economy and the eye-watering levels of corruption and mismanagement that had embedded itself into every aspect of the government meant that Nkrumah's only political allies were those who were directly on his payroll. Feeling increasingly paranoid after 2 assassination attempts on his life, Nkrumah began meddling with the one institution in Ghana that was still powerful enough to stand up to him. Looking to prevent an army revolt, Nkrumah began trying to subjugate the Ghanaian army just as he had done with other institutions. CPP spies would allegedly be sent to infiltrate the army, looking to identify potential traitors. Nkrumah also demoted a number of high-ranking officials, restructured the army, and set up a special presidential guard regiment devoted to his personal protection. With the government's popularity at an all-time low, and their own personal interests at stake, a coalition of disgruntled army officers plotted and successfully overthrew Nkrumah's government while he was away on a diplomatic trip on the 24th of February, 1966.
India's Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, meets President Nkrumah of Ghana. That is, he was president at the moment these pictures were taken. 2 days later, he was overthrown in a coup by military forces. Nkrumah was on his way to Peking to end the war in Vietnam, he said. It was on the day after his arrival in the Red Chinese capital that he heard the sad news he was out of a job. Ghana had been one of the first African nations to gain independence, but her days of democracy were short-lived when Nkrumah elected himself for life, jailed all his foes, and began a despotic rule.
How many people do you know of who died in detention?
Well, at the time I went, I didn't know the real number, but later on, when I was there, the period I was there, I think about say between 10 to 15 people died at the time I was there.
How were you treated here?
Before I was sent to prison there, I was in chains and handcuffs. persisting goodness.
Were you in chains and handcuffs all the time?
Yeah, persisting goodness in the place here.
How did you feel when you learnt you were going to be let out?
Oh, very happy, sir.
How long were you in detention?
I've been in detention for nearly 5 years now.
How did they treat you?
Well, I was not so badly treated, but the lockups were too much for us. We were kept in custody for about 3 months without giving any air.
What about the food and general treatment?
Food is generally poor, very, very poor, and had caused a lot of illness to us, to many of us.
What did you feel when you heard you were being allowed out?
I felt that probably the army might have taken power. Otherwise, the wicked government would not permit anybody to be released, because we were told that we would remain in detention for the rest of our lives.
Kwame Nkrumah would never see his homeland ever again. Having received notice of his overthrow, he fled to the Republic of Guinea, where he was appointed Honorary Co-President by fellow socialist and Pan-Africanist President Ahmed Sékou Touré. From his new base in Guinea, Nkrumah would dedicate the remaining 6 years of his life to publishing various books and essays centered around his vision for a united African government. In a memoir he published 3 years after his overthrow, Nkrumah alleged that the CIA and other Western intelligence agencies acting in collusion with the coup plotters were the real driving forces behind his overthrow. And although the images of thousands of Ghanaians celebrating in the streets tell a different story, it is still widely believed by many of Nkrumah's contemporary supporters that the overthrow was primarily due to foreign interference as opposed to the domestic unpopularity of Nkrumah's government. And so even nearly 5 decades after his death in 1972, Nkrumah's legacy remains a hot topic of debate between his contemporary supporters who admire him for his Pan-African vision and socialist philosophies, and his many detractors, often with first-hand experience, who continue to condemn him for his authoritarianism and the eye-watering levels of corruption and mismanagement that took hold of Ghanaian society during his reign. Once again, it's KB Taiwo for New Africa. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, then please like and share this video, and also consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/newafrica. Thanks again for your support, and until next time.
À nouveau secoué par le démon du coup d'État.
Mais il était tellement puissant qu'on ne peut pas l'écarter. Il faut le... Mais il était tellement puissant.
And after initially struggling to clearly define what Nkrumahism was and how it was any different from other Marxist socialist ideas, the Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute eventually concluded that Nkrumahism was an ideology for the new Africa, independent and absolutely free from imperialism, organized on a continental scale, founded upon the conception of one and united Africa, drawing its strength from modern science and technology and from the traditional African belief that the free development of each is conditioned by the free development of all. But despite the elaborate theoretical framework of Nkrumahism, its real-world application would ultimately fail to produce the socialist paradise envisioned by Nkrumah and his political scientists. In its bid to rapidly transform Ghana into an industrial powerhouse, Nkrumah's government set out to execute a long list of major infrastructure projects, from shipping ports to roads, dams, universities, and manufacturing plants. Everything was to be built from scratch and built fast. The problem, however, was that not many local companies could actually bring these projects to life. And so
let's kindly rise and welcome the Chancellor's procession.
Needed to be advertised to the very same foreign companies that are regularly denounced by leading members of the CPP. To make matters worse, the award of these contracts was quickly hijacked by corrupt officials.
Thank you very much. Let's kindly take our seats. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the second lecture for the 13th Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Lectures, and today we'll have a special congregation as well. The theme for the 13th Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Lectures is on Diaspora, Pan-Africanism, and Spiritual Awakening in Nkrumah's Years Abroad and as Head of State. For this morning and for the second lecture, we'll be privileged to listen to our guest lecturer, Professor Emmanuel Ichampong, Ellen Gunnan, Professor of History and African and African American Studies from Harvard University. He would be speaking on the topic, the Pan-Africanist Nkrumah and Africa's Triple Heritage, Christianity, Islam, and Africa's indigenous religions. My name is Akosiachi Abiasaki. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you. Kindly help me welcome Reverend Dr. Patrick Kwame to give us the opening prayer.
Shall we rise as an honor to God even as we take the opening prayer? Shall we pray? We begin in the name of God the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Gracious God, we thank you for yesterday's lectures. We thank you for the continent Africa, the nation Ghana, the Central Region, and Cape Coast. We thank you for the leadership of the University of Cape Coast, and we thank you for the lives of all staff and students of the university. We commit today's lecture and special congregation into your hands. We ask that may you make everything beautiful to your glory. We thank you for an answered prayer. This we pray in the name of Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen.
Let's kindly take our seats. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me to introduce our chair for the second lecture of the 13th Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Lectures. And our chairperson has had his official association with the university back to the 9th of March 2002, when he was appointed Chancellor of this university. He stands out as an astute businessman with great experience, especially in the mining sector. The past 21 years that he has served as Chancellor of the university has seen the institution evolve into a university of worldwide acclaim, something that can be attested to by the Times Higher Education World University Rankings. Having seen different management regimes over the years in the university, he remains an iconic personality and therefore needs no elaborate and extended introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, with all of us standing, help me welcome our chair for today, our very own Dr. Sir Sam Jonah, Chancellor of University of Cape Coast.
Our Vice Chancellor, our landlord of Saberma, Kwesiasa II, Paramount Chief of Ogwa Traditional Area, members of the Diplomatic Corps here present, our Pro Vice Chancellor, our Registrar, Nawa Kweku Enu III, Marehe of Ogwa Traditional Area, Nananom, our Member of Parliament, and any other members of Parliament who are here, members of the convocation, staff, students, and alumni of this great institution, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for me to stand before you today, as I did yesterday, as your Chancellor, to welcome you to this very thought-provoking lecture series, which has been dedicated to the life and legacy of a truly remarkable leader, Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president, was not merely a statesman. He was a beacon of honesty, visionary leadership, and transparency. Indeed, his unwavering commitment to the unity of the continent and the fight against neocolonialism and imperialism remains a source of inspiration. He embodied the very values of discipline and frugality with a well-acknowledged profound disdain for materialism and excess, qualities that resonate deeply in the landscape of leadership today. In yesterday's lecture, Professor Champon delved into the multifaceted persona of the great man, exploring the influence of his experiences in America, the role of religiosity in his life, and the complex relationship he had with women, among other dimensions. We discovered the man whose personality was magnetic, mercurial, at times lonely, all contributing to the tapestry of his life and leadership. Yesterday's lecture, those who were here would agree with me, was riveting. It was scholarly, inspiring, and balanced. I have no doubt at all that we will have more of the same today. Today we are here to continue our journey through the life of Nkrumah. Professor Champon promises to shed light on the fascinating aspect of Nkrumah's journey, indeed the intersection of Pan-Africanism and spirituality. How did faith shape his politics, particularly in the face of the many assassination attempts during his presidency? How profound was the impact that these experiences have on his leadership, philosophy, his vision for Africa, and his commitment to its unity? Ladies and gentlemen, as we delve into the subject, let us remember that the lessons we can draw from Nkrumah's life extend far beyond history. They carry with them a timeless relevance, for the leadership values he espoused are desperately needed at all levels of governance in Africa and beyond. As I indicated yesterday, Professor Champon will be honored with an honorary degree after the lectures. He will be the 52nd recipient of an honorary award from this famous school. Stay with us as we honor our distinguished speaker. Now let us open our minds and heart to the insight that today's lecture would undoubtedly provide as we honor the enduring legacy of Kwame Nkrumah. Let me end on this note by being a bit clannish. My uncle is here and I have to acknowledge his presence, Professor Hagen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir Chancellor. We'll take the UCC anthem. Kindly note, text to the anthem can be found on page 32 of the brochure you have.
UCC, we are the liveliest of them all. UCC, UCC, we are the teachers of the nation. We learn to teach, we find out and pass on, we counsel, we guide, that all may be enlightened. UCC, UCC, therefore rise to your call. UCC, UCC, to the call, let us rise to a call, let us rise, veritas nobis lumen. UCC, UCC, therefore rise to your call. UCC, UCC, to the call, let us rise to a call, let us rise, veritas nobis lumen. UCC, UCC, we are the humblest of them all. UCC, UCC, we are the bedrock of all knowledge. Be proud of this, we students and workers in concert shall work, that your image may be heightened. UCC, UCC, therefore rise to your call. UCC, UCC, to the call, let us rise to a call, let us rise, veritas nobis lumen. UCC, UCC, therefore rise to your call. UCC, UCC, to the call, let us rise to a call, let us rise, veritas nobis lumen. UCC, UCC, we are the kindest of them all. UCC, UCC, we are the brainchild of Nkrumah. We train, we mold, and live by his mission to impart our virtues, that Ghana may be strengthened. UCC, UCC, therefore rise to your call. UCC, UCC, to the call, let us rise to a call, let us rise, veritas nobis lumen. UCC, UCC, therefore rise to your call. UCC, UCC, to the call, let us rise to a call, let us rise, veritas nobis lumen.
Thank you. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to listen to our Vice Chancellor as he delivers the welcome address. With a round of applause, let's welcome Professor Johnson Nyako Bwampong.
Respected Dr. Sir Sam Jonah, Chancellor of the University of Cape Coast, Osabarema Kwesi Atta II, Omanhin of Ogwa Traditional Area, members of Diplomatic Corps, former members of the University Council, Nana Kweku Enu III, Manrahin of Ogwa Traditional Area, Nana Amba Ayibia Ayaba Kronti Hima of Ogwa Traditional Area, Professor Rosemond Abuajiwa Abohin, Pro-Vice Chancellor, University of Cape Coast, Mr. Jephte Emmanuel Onyame, Registrar, University of Cape Coast, Honorable Dr. Kwame Minta Nyakun, MP, Cape Coast North Constituency, Provosts, Deans, Directors of Academic and Administrative Units, College Registrars and College Finance Officers present, distinguished guest lecturer, Professor Emmanuel Kwame Echampong, former Vice Chancellors and former Pro-Vice Chancellors of University of Cape Coast present, Nananom, members of convocation, distinguished invited guests, alumni of the University of Cape Coast, friends from the media, staff and students, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. On behalf of the management of the University of Cape Coast, staff and students, I wish to welcome you all to the second day of the 13th series of the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Lecture of the University of Cape Coast. We appreciate your presence here with us today. Instituted in the year 1974 by the University of Cape Coast, the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Lecture was dedicated to the memory of the late first president of the Republic of Ghana, Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, for his vision in establishing this university, and also for spearheading the cause of Pan-Africanism in particular, and the progress of the black race globally. Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was of the view that education should serve as a catalyst for development. To him, education should be of critical importance if Ghana, and for that matter, Africa, was to achieve her desired objective and unleash her potential. To this end, the University of Cape Coast was founded to play a key role in the development of our nation. The university in the early days of her establishment had a number of people of African descent enrolling to share in the knowledge and intellectual activity it offered. By this lecture series, therefore, the University of Cape Coast wants to re-echo the dreams of the founding father and to remind us all of the centrality of our role in Ghana and Africa's development. A forum such as this reveals the highest possible level of scholarship enshrined in the topmost ranked university in Ghana, that is, the University of Cape Coast. Therefore, by this lecture series, we also wish to bring to bear the quality of education this citadel of learning has to offer and has been offering since its inception as a university college in 1962. These lecture series are based on the Pan-Africanist agenda that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah advocated for throughout his political career. Nkrumah's vision of Pan-Africanism seeks to define a common ground for all Africans wherever they may be. Said Chancellor and Chair of the occasion, the lecture series is therefore our way of paying tribute to this man, his vision, his nationalism, his distinctive service to Africa. Globalism, a globalism based on freedom and justice. At this lecture series, the university calls on people of diverse academic persuasions, both from within and outside the country, to think with her in an extended fashion about a relevant theme under the guidance of a carefully selected personality of demonstrable achievement and ability. This allows us to identify and fully appraise a contingent and contemporary themes for our benefit. Sir Chancellor and Chair for the occasion, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, since the institution of these lecture series, distinguished personalities from within and outside the country have been invited to deliver thought-provoking lectures on different themes. The first presentation of the lecture series was delivered in 1976 by Chief Obafemi Awolowo, who was then the Chancellor of Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria, Nigeria. His topic was the problems of Africa, the need for ideological reappraisal. Since then, we have had a number of great intellectuals, scholars, scientists, diplomats, and philosophers, both from and within and outside the country, deliver thought-provoking lectures on different themes. Sir Chancellor and Chairman of the occasion, the 12th series was delivered by Professor Akila Pasoya on the theme Negotiation and Management of Public Agreements, our nation's Achilles heel. Today, we are privileged to have Professor Emmanuel Kwame Echampo, the Ellen Gani Professor of History and Professor of African American Studies at Harvard University, to give us the 13th lecture on the theme Diaspora, Pan-Africanism, and Spiritual Awakening, Nkrumah's years abroad and as head of state. The speaker took us through the sub-theme titled Diaspora, Intellectual, and Spiritual Awakening, Nkrumah's years abroad, which was delivered yesterday. For today's lecture, our distinguished lecturer will continue with the lecture. And the sub-theme for this morning's lecture, the Pan-Africanist Nkrumah and Africans' triple heritage, Christianity, Islam, and African indigenous religions. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, you are welcome and enjoy the lecture. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor. To introduce our speaker, kindly help me welcome the Pro-Vice Chancellor, University of Cape Coast, Professor Mrs. Rosamond Boahini.
Professor Emmanuel Achampong is the Ellen Gani Professor of History and of African and African American Studies at Harvard University. He served as the Oppenheimer Faculty Director of the Harvard Center for African Studies from July 2016 to June 2023. Achampong is a fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences and a corresponding fellow of the Royal Historical Society, UK. He obtained his PhD in history from the University of Virginia in 1993. He received an honorary Doctor of Laws from the University of Ghana in 2018. Professor Achampong is the author and editor of several books and articles, including Independent Africa, the First Generation of Nation Builders, 2023. Between the Sea and the Lagoon, an Eco-Social History of the Agnon of Southeastern Ghana, 2001. And Drink, Power and Cultural Change, a Social History of Alcohol in Ghana, 18th century to recent times, 1996. He served as a co-chief editor with Henry Louis Gates, Jr. for the Dictionary of African Biography, 6 volumes, 2012. Professor Achampong has been a co-editor of the Journal of African History of African Diaspora and serves on the editorial board of African Arguments. Professor Achampong is an ordained minister and serves as Minister for Formation and Worship at Harvard Memorial Church. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, please let's welcome Professor Emmanuel Achampong.
Nananom Sir Sam Jonah, Chancellor, UCC, Vice Chancellor Boampong, Pro Vice Chancellor Rosemond Bohine, faculty colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, again standing on all previous protocols, good morning. I'm delighted to be able to offer the second and the final lecture in this 2-part series with the title, The Pan-Africanist in Nkrumah and Africa's Triple Heritage, Christianity, Islam, and African Indigenous Religions. Let me see if we can see my slides. Okay, so briefly, each one I have an epigram that captures the spirit of the lecture. So today's epigram is from the Accra Evening News in 1950. Blessed are they who are imprisoned for self-government's sake, for theirs is the freedom of the land. We have the outline, so I'll do an introduction and I'll take you through on the slides. Then we'll look at Nkrumah and the church, and I'll talk about Nkrumah's 7-day spiritual retreat in 1960. I'll look at Nkrumah and Islam through the lens of his relations with 2 important Muslim leaders, Sharif Fanta Madi, who you know as Kankan Yame, but was a distinctive and a distinguished Muslim Marabout from Kankan in Guinea. And then I'll look at his relations with Sheikh Ibrahim Niass, described as perhaps the most important Muslim intellectual in the second half of the 20th century in West Africa. The next section, I'll look at Nkrumah and indigenous African religions through his relationship with Nana Ikuya of Arabia, the high priestess of the Akonedi Shrine. And then I'll move to a conclusion. And I'll use the slides to show you some of the material, which are new documents. Today I'll be slightly longer than yesterday. I hope you will bear with me. In 1945, Nkrumah arrived in England. He lived in London for 2 years, an intense period immersed in political work, beginning with the organization of the 5th Pan-African Congress in Manchester, a few months after his arrival. Nkrumah had many opportunities to hone his organizational skills in London, working with George Padmore on the 1945 Manchester Congress, then with the West African Students' Union, or WASU, and the West African National Secretariat. In 1947, he accepted the invitation of the United Gold Coast Convention, UGCC, the first political party in the Gold Coast, to become its General Secretary. Nkrumah broke away from the UGCC with a group of party members to establish the Convention People's Party in 1949. Impressive electoral wins in 1951 and 1954 would bring the CPP into partnership with the colonial government, with Nkrumah as leader of government business in 1951 and then as Prime Minister. After a final election in 1956, Ghana became independent on March 6, 1957, with Nkrumah as its Prime Minister. The introduction of universal adult suffrage in Gold Coast politics from 1951 elections made it imperative that political parties appeal to all eligible voters of voting age. In 1949, when the population of the Gold Coast and British mandated territory of Togoland stood at 4.5 million people, adherents of Christianity represented 30% of the population. Islam, 4%. African traditional religions, 66%. In 1960, the year Ghana was declared a republic, the share of the Christian population had increased to 42.8%, Islam 12%, and African traditional religions 38.2%. Though Christianity had the largest proportion of religious adherents in 1960, John S. Proby points out that Ghana was in no way a Christian country, and he underscores the penetration of traditional religion into the other faiths. To be a successful nationalist politician, Nkrumah knew it was important to appeal to these three constituencies. Nkrumah's Pan-Africanism brought him into close relations with Muslims across the continent. His associates in the Casablanca group, the radical political leaders who defined themselves in contradistinction with the politically conservative Monrovia group, were all Muslims, including Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, Ahmed Ben Bella of Algeria, King Hassan II of Morocco, Modibo Keita of Mali, and Ahmed Sékou Touré of Guinea. Nkrumah would come to develop close relations with two Muslim Sufi leaders, Sharif Fanta Mahdi of Kankan in Guinea, and the Tijaniya Sheikh Ibrahim Niass of Senegal. The title Sharif indicates that Fanta Mahdi was believed to be a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, a person gifted with barakah, making him a repository of spiritual grace or blessings. He He was known to Ghanaian associates of Nkrumah as Kankan Yame, or the Oracle of Kankan. Sekuturi and his wife, Andre, both hailed from Kankan, and he was most likely the person who introduced the Sherif to Nkrumah. Sheikh Ibrahim Niasse was a life force, a Pan-Africanist himself. His followers in the early 1960s numbered in the millions, from Mauritania to Nigeria, much more than the population of Senegal itself. Nkrumah clearly saw in Ibrahim Niasse a Pan-African or a Pan-Africanist ally, and according to traditions in the family of Ibrahim Niasse, a Ghanaian disciple of the Sheikh called Alhaji Noga introduced the Sheikh to Nkrumah. The Sheikh came to see himself as a spiritual mentor to Nkrumah. Nkrumah's interest in promoting plant medicine in independent Ghana and developing pharmaceuticals through bioprospecting led to the documentation and testing of healing plants. Okay. Okay. A pioneer in this was the Equiapim medical doctor, Oku Ampofo, who began to test plant medicines in rural Equiapim villages during World War II. Ampofo's efforts drew the attention of Nkrumah in the late 1950s, who invited Ampofo to collaborate with pharmacists and chemists involved in scientific research into plant medicine at the University of Ghana and the Kumasi College of Technology. The partnership between traditional healers and scientific researchers into plant medicine was taken to a new level when the Nkrumah government established in 1960, the year Ghana became a republic, the Ghana Psychic and Traditional Healers Association. The association was launched in 1962. His desire to ensure the success of the association would lead Nkrumah into a relationship with the high priest of Akonedi Shrine in Latte Equiapim, Nana Paribia. Abna Dov Osio Asare comments on the experimentation with indigenous spirituality and healing as part of the nationalist agenda in independent Africa. Let me quote her. In Ghana, it became fashionable for the post-colonial leadership to experiment with indigenous spirituality and healing. First President Kwame Nkrumah embodied this trend, confiding with High Priestess Nana Paribia at the Kunedi Shrine of Latte, whose deity was a spiritual extension of his administration, quotation closed. That Nkrumah's evolving relationship with Nana Paribia coincided with the onset of assassination attempts on Nkrumah's life is not insignificant. I will explore the implications of this during the lecture. The theologian, Kwesi Dixon, observes that Nkrumah never made public his position on religion during his leadership of Ghana between 1951 and 1966. But the different religious traditions exercised a powerful role in his life and politics. We have seen from the lecture from yesterday that Nkrumah himself was a theologian and licensed Presbyterian preacher in Pennsylvania. Christian symbols, hymns, and scripture were deployed in CPP politics. Even the date to declare Ghana a republic was discussed with Sheikh A.A. Hussein of Cairo, the in-law of Al-Haji Sina, a Ghanaian who studied at Al-Azhar, Egypt, and married a Muslim Egyptian woman. Incidentally, it is through him that Nkrumah found Fatia. In this lecture, I'll examine Africa's triple heritage in Nkrumah's life and politics, beginning with Christianity and Nkrumah's relations with the church, then Islam through those two Muslim leaders, and lastly, his relationship with Nana of Arabia. I will then offer concluding remarks. Whereas Christianity, now I move to the next section. Whereas Christianity or Christians constituted only 30% of the population of the Gold Coast and British mandated territory of Togoland in 1939, the central role of Christian missions in education positioned products of mission schools at the forefront of Gold Coast nationalism. It is perhaps not surprising then that Christian language and symbolism permeated nationalist and the political struggle after World War II. Nkrumah and the CPP did not introduce Christian language and symbolism into Ghanaian politics. Nkrumah discerned the enormous influence of Christianity on Ghanaian life and sought to exploit this in forging his political kingdom. The song that became the CPP's favorite rallying song, John Henry Newman's lead, Kindly Light, had been the rallying song of the football team Cape Coast Dwarfs in the 1930s. And Kwesi Dixon recalled often hearing the team singing this hymn in the night before their football engagements. What is perhaps Nkrumah's favorite biblical verse from Matthew 6:33, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you," was reproduced in 1958, the year after Ghana's independence, on the pedestal of Nkrumah's statue in front of Parliament, as "Seek ye first the political kingdom, and all other things shall be added unto you." The church in Ghana viewed itself as a supranational body that was above partisan politics, but claimed to speak on behalf of Ghanaians. It was the largest organized body in the country. Naturally, it protested Nkrumah's use of Christian symbolism and language. While the party machine may have been creative in its deployment of Christian language, as Nkrumah was increasingly likened to the Messiah, it is important not to forget that Nkrumah was a theologian, keenly aware of the place of religion in the forging of polity or society. In 1949, the Christian Council in the Gold Coast had issued a statement on the Christian and politics. It expressed its position as above party politics, yet in favor of all parties that had Christian principles. Following the Gold Coast riots of February 1948 and the formation of the CPP in July 1949, the church, as if in anticipation of impending political conflict, sought to define its neutrality, while at the same time not ceding its platform as representative of Gold Coasters. In the subsequent years, it would clash with the CPP and Nkrumah over its use of Christian language and symbols. These included the wedding on the pedestal of Nkrumah's statue referred to above, the formation of the Young Pioneers movement, which the Christian Council considered incipiently atheistic, and what the church viewed as the divinization of Nkrumah through titles or honorifics. The deportation of the Anglican Bishop of Accra, the Right Reverend Reginald Richard Rosevier, a prominent member of the Christian Council, on August 13, 1962, drew a line in the sand. Nkrumah set up the Ghanaian Young Pioneer Movement in June 1960 as a voluntary organization for children between the ages of 8 and 12. It later became compulsory. Bishop Rosevier's synod charge of 1962 concerning the Young Pioneers drew the ire of the press and the CPP. The bishop opined that, and I quote Bishop Roosevelt, "Not only myself, but all heads of churches in Ghana are shocked by the godlessness of this movement and by some of its phrases and songs for the children to repeat or to sing." We made our views known to the Minister of Education last April, which is 1962, saying that we found it impossible to give our support and cooperation in the development of the movement as present constituted. He went on further to state that, moreover, it seems that the movement confuses the work and example of a great man with divine acts which are unique in history. The incipient atheism is quite foreign to the traditional concept of the African personality. Quotation close. The press backlash was impressive, as the bishop was soundly castigated as an interfering neo-colonialist and a saboteur of the ongoing national revolution. He was deported in August 1962, and his deportation order stated that, I quote, his presence in Ghana was not conducive to the public good. Roosevelt and the Christian Council petitioned Nkrumah for his return, a request granted in October 1962, and Roosevelt returned to Ghana on November 13, 1962. An intimidated church was effectively silenced, and no criticism from the Christian Council came for the remainder of Nkrumah's rule. Nkrumah and the CPP rode roughshod over Bishop Roosevelt because Roosevelt was an expatriate, and it irritated Ghanaian nationalists that an expatriate head of a Christian domination would propose to lecture the nationalist government on its revolution. It did not matter that many heads of churches and clergymen shared this position. A clash in 1963 between Nkrumah and Archbishop John Kwadwo Emisa, the head of the Roman Catholic Church in Ghana, had a very different outcome, emphasizing the importance of having Ghanaian or African heads of the historic churches. Then they could claim to speak on behalf of Ghanaians. Reverend Father Damois, a priest at the Roman Catholic Church in Salt Pond, was invited to the Salt Pond police station for a message and was detained on his arrival without any explanation why. That same evening, Archbishop Emisa called at Salt Pond and was informed that Father Damois had been detained. He marched to the police station and refused to leave without his priest unless the priest was formally charged. Poby recounts how the news spread like wildfire in the community, and Catholics gathered in support outside the police station. A vigil was kept all night, ending in the celebration of communion the following morning. Instructions came from Accra that Father Damois be transferred to Elmina police station. An old center of Catholicism, the crowds got even larger at Elmina. Attempts by cabinet ministers who were Catholic, like Kofi Baku, to get the Archbishop to back down was unsuccessful. The Archbishop got his wish. Father Damois was released. A key figure in this controversy was J.E. Hagan, the Minister of Central Region, who Poby, not me, who Poby describes as a Roman Catholic and a great bully. Hagan happens to be the uncle of my mentor, Professor George Hagan, who educated me on what transpired behind the scenes to get Father Damois released. The point of contention seems to have been some critical articles Father Damois had written about Nkrumah. I quote Professor Hagen. Nkrumah couldn't handle Emisa the way he handled Roosevelt. This was not a foreigner. He could not deport him. This was a Ghanaian, and a very highly intelligent Ghanaian at that, who had risen to the high position of the leader of the Catholic faith, and everyone knows that if you touch the Catholic Church, you are in trouble. It is a worldwide organization and nothing would work. You could not deal with President Kennedy, who was then the president of the US, who was Catholic. Even the Protestant heads would not talk to you. In fact, my uncle was ordered by Nkrumah to release Damwa immediately. What Nkrumah said was, and my Fante is not too good, Emisa ono or a ruffian. Inti yidamwa na yasum njoyen. That Emisa is a ruffian. So release Damwa and let us have peace of mind. An African voice and face representing the church made a big difference. The irony is that Damwa would be sent to the United States to study and returned a Marxist, perhaps more radical than even Nkrumah. The next section is on Nkrumah itself. It's entitled 7 Days in the Wilderness. Though some of Nkrumah's posturing looked familiarly Christian, Nkrumah was exploiting broader sources of spirituality that transcended Christianity. The intention was to create a public impression that he was spiritually powerful. Elderly informants told me about the reputation of the Nzima for being spiritually powerful, and I recall they would refer to it as Nzima Beye. In his autobiography, Nkrumah tells of an incident narrated to him by his mother when carrying the young Nkrumah on his back across a stream. Nkrumah excitedly exclaimed that she, the mother, was standing on a fish. His mother was even more surprised when she discovered to her utter amazement that she had actually trapped a fish with one of her feet. They had the fish for dinner that evening. Nkrumah cultivated this impression of spiritual prowess, and from time to time he went on retreat to reinforce himself and come back recharged to do the work of building Ghana. In March 1960, Nkrumah went on a 7-day spiritual retreat, described in the media as 7 days in the wilderness, with obvious comparison with Christ's retreat into the wilderness, which ended in his successful rejection of Satan's temptation. The language and imagery of this retreat was such that the church could not but express misgivings, as the ideology of the Nationalist Party and government took on the form of a religion. Each day of the retreat, the evening news, the party mouthpiece, provided a front cover and image, sometimes with several images and short reports in the following pages. The first day of the retreat, on March 21st, the paper reported that Nkrumah had left Takoradi for some unknown destination for a week of meditation and prayer, and had asked the nation to pray for unity, peace, and love before his departure. He was last seen at Hafasini. The first day of Nkrumah's retreat coincided with the Sharpeville massacre in the town of Sharpeville. As repeated attempts to assassinate Nkrumah from 1962 failed, the perception of him as spiritually powerful grew. Okay. Now let's go to our next section. And now I'm looking at Nkrumah and Islam, relations with Sharif Fanta Mahdi and Sheikh Ibrahim Niass. I grew up in Ghana with stories of Nkrumah and a shrine in Guinea called Kankanyame. Documenting this connection, however, has been rather elusive. Breton in his book, The Rise and Fall of Nkrumah, a rather negative treatment of the Ghanaian leader, derides Nkrumah, and I quote Breton, "After the coup, E. Ayekumi, financial and economic advisor and confidant of the president, revealed at the press conference another example of Nkrumah's reliance on supernatural forces. Nkrumah, as was his nature, had become suspicious of Ayekumi. Ayekumi related that on 2 occasions he was taken by a security officer to see a Muslim who told me to open my palm, and he fumbled through sand and a mirror which he had in his hand and told me that the president liked me very much. I would have a great future if I would remain loyal to Kwame Nkrumah. He gave me some roots, including what appeared to be gum arabic, and incense to smoke once a week, and a bottle of mixture, which was basically Florida water, to rub my body and face before I go to work. The Muslim, it appears, was a Marabu or holy man from Kankan in Guinea, whom Nkrumah had brought to Ghana for his personal use." Quotation close. So this is Ayekumi. For Breton, Nkrumah was, to quote him, a man of Amabaini, an author of an important book on the political and social thought of Kwame Nkrumah, in her personal interviews with members of Nkrumah's family, also detected this influence of indigenous religion and Islam, again elusive, in Nkrumah's life. As Ahmad Baini wrote to me in 2011, and I quote her, "In my 2 conversations with the late Madame Fatia, she told me that Nkrumah was visited by the Guinean Kankan, that is traditional leader or healer, on several occasions. Madame Fatia was often sent away when they visited and saw Nkrumah in private. She suspected that Nkrumah was aware of his illness, that is cancer, and shielded her. She was informed of his death late in the day and was very shocked. Whilst in Conakry, Nkrumah did not talk about his illness in his letters to her." Quotation closed. I sent an earlier version of a chapter in my book Independent Africa, which we will see later today, that discussed Nkrumah's relations with Kankan Yame to Dr. Nana S.K.B. Asante, to share with the physician, Professor Beidu, who was too ill to see me in July 2012. Professor Beidu read the paper and sent word through Nana Dr. Asante, confirming the Kankan Yame connection. Professor Beidu recalled that Nkrumah's go-between to Kankan Yame was a security man called Ambrose Yankee. When news reached Nkrumah that Kankan Yame was seriously ill, he sent Yankee, Professor Beidu, and his personal physician, Dr. Morton, to Guinea-Conakry. Their instruction was to stabilize the Marabu and bring him to Ghana for medical treatment. When the team arrived in Conakry, they were informed that the Marabu was in his village and would be sent for the following day. The messengers went the following day only to return with the news of the death of the Marabu at his village. Kankan Yame was in fact a Muslim Marabu from Kankan called Sharif Fanta Madi. His wisdom is perhaps what lent comparison to an oracle, hence the name Kankan Yame. Of course, Yame being the Akan title for God. Lucy Berman notes in her study on Muslim brotherhoods and politics in Senegal that Nkrumah had shown great respect to the Guinean Marabu Sharif Fanta Madi. Sharif Fanta Madi died in 1954. That even the Governor General of French West Africa attended his funeral, underscores that this was no ordinary Marabu. I was informed in an interview in Guinea by Mr. Nfali Sangare, a minister in Sekou Touré's government, that the Sharif Fanta Madi had actually predicted that Nkrumah would become Prime Minister of the Gold Coast. It is apparent that Nkrumah's relations with Guinea predated Guinea's no vote in 1958 and Nkrumah's grant of an interest-free loan to the cash-strapped Guinea. If Sharif Fanta Madi died in 1954, as reported by Lucy Berman in her authoritative work, but a Muslim Marabout from Guinea or Kankan visited with Nkrumah when he was married to Fatia, then someone clearly inherited Sharif Fanta Madi's office and authority and continued the relationship with Nkrumah. So let me show you some photos. So this is me and Mrs. Sekuturi, who is still alive in Guinea. I'm sorry, it's a little dark, so I'm to the right, Mrs. Sekuturi is to the left. This is Mr. Mfali Sangari. He was a minister and then the governor of the Guinea Bank of Ghana, Central Bank of Ghana, and told me quite a lot about this relationship between Nkrumah and Sheikh Fanta Madi, who was also called Sheikh Sekuba. So, and then this is Sharif Fanta Madi, or Kankanyami to you. We know more about Nkrumah's relations with Sheikh Ibrahim Niasse, who lived from 1900 to 1975. He descended from a long line of distinguished Muslim scholars. He was a leader of the Tijaniya order in Senegal until his death in 1975, and has been described by Mervyn Hiskett as the most renowned Muslim scholar in West Africa in the 20th century. As I've pointed out, Niasse's followers numbered in the millions, constituting the largest single movement in West Africa. Niasse served as the vice president of the Muslim World League, with King Faisal of Saudi Arabia as president, just to give you a sense of his stature. Niasse's grandson, Usman Umar Khan, is a professor at Harvard and has kindly shared with me relevant documents from his grandfather's private papers. I mentioned in my introduction that a Ghanaian disciple of Ibrahim Niasse, El Haj Noga, introduced Sheikh Niasse to Nkrumah. This must be before Ghana's republic status on July 1, 1960. Nkrumah and Niasse reinforced each other's Pan-African networks. In November 1960, Nkrumah appointed one of Sheikh Niasse's nephews, Habib Niang, as his advisor on relations with independent French-speaking countries in the office of the president. So Ibrahim Niasse's networks were coming up. A second nephew of Sheikh Niasse, Ibrahim Mahmoud Diop, headed the Arabic section of the Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute. The Ideological Institute, as you know, was established in 1961. Nkrumah introduced Sheikh Niasse to African presidents like Nasser of Egypt. Habib Niang, in the office of the president, sent a telegram to Nasser on Nkrumah's instruction, introduced Sheikh Niasse to Nasser in 1961. Niasse visited Egypt in 1961, where he was invited to lead Friday prayers in the prestigious Azhar Mosque. Niasse became a close friend and ally of President Nasser. For both Nasser and Nkrumah, Niasse was an asset in their Pan-African agenda. He had hundreds of thousands of followers in Mauritania and his own line of communication to the president of Mauritania, Ould Dada. So when Nkrumah would send formal correspondence to Ould Dada, he would tell Niasse to follow up. Nkrumah also counted on the Sheikh's good office in his relations with the president, with the king of Morocco, Hassan II, because the Sheikh knew both Hassan II well as the late father, Mohammed V, who had died in February 1961. Sheikh Niasse became an advocate of Nkrumah's Pan-African message, calling for a United States of Africa. Nkrumah would correspond to the Sheikh, and in one letter from October 1961, he writes, and here I quote Nkrumah, "I note with lively satisfaction the steps you are taking to spread news about the contribution that I am making by God's grace to the renaissance of our common homeland, Africa. Further, your desire to make a tour throughout Africa to spread our common ideal will be a worthy contribution, especially as it will follow the publication in Arabic, English, and French of the book to which reference has been made earlier." So let me show you some of these letters. Okay, so this is Nkrumah to Ibrahim Niasse on 30th November. It is in this letter that he tells the Sheikh that I've appointed your nephew as my advisor in the office of the president. In this second letter, this is when they are planning for the Sheikh to tour African countries with Nkrumah's message of a United States of Africa. For Nkrumah, his relationship with Sheikh Niasse was so special that when the Sheikh visited Ghana in February 1961, Nkrumah went to the airport personally to meet the Sheikh, a courtesy extended to visiting heads of state. Leonid Brezhnev, the Soviet leader, also visited Ghana in February 1961. Nkrumah personally introduced Sheikh Niasse to Brezhnev. For Nkrumah, the Sheikh was a world leader. So let me show you not a very clear picture of Nkrumah meeting the Sheikh at Accra airport. So that's them. Ibrahim Niasse considered Nkrumah a special friend. Lucy Berman writes that Nkrumah's belief in the Senegalese Marabou's power, and I'm quoting Berman, manifested itself in generous gifts of various kinds through his years in office. Niasse rallied to Nkrumah's support when Nkrumah was overthrown in a military coup in February 1966, provoking a confrontation with President Leopold Senghor, whose government had recognized the new National Liberation Council government in Ghana. Berman provides details from interviews she conducted with Niasse, his disciples and government officials in Senegal in March 1966. Let me quote Lucy Berman. When Nkrumah was removed from office, the Marabout, that is Sheikh Niasse, came out quickly on his side. On the occasion of a trip to Mali in March 1966, Niasse sent a telegram to the president of Guinea, thanking him for supporting Nkrumah. At the time, the government of Senegal had already acknowledged the military regime in Ghana and had definitely refused to support the movement by Sékou Touré to reinstate the former Ghanaian president. Naturally, the Guinean government publicized Niasse's telegram on Radio Guinea and Touré's official message of thanks. In this instance, the government of Senegal felt obliged to ask the Marabout to be more circumspect in his actions, but these efforts were unsatisfactory. Sheikh Niasse was furious. He felt that the government of Senegal had no right to intervene between him, and he described Nkrumah as his talibé, his disciple. He wrote a letter to the president in which he said that he had been humiliated by the request and that he refused categorically to do as the president had asked. In the end, it was Senghor who backed down, extending an apology to Niasse through his presidential advisor on religious affairs. Let us go to our last section. Okay. So now I'm looking at Nkrumah, Nana Oparibia, and the Akonedi Shrine. The validation of indigenous medicine and spiritual practices with the independent government marked a major shift from a colonial policy that persecuted spiritual healers and priests and labeled herbal medicine as toxic and potentially dangerous. From the 1920s, proto-nationalists, including members of the Aborigines Rights Protection Society, had begun to promote herbal medicine. The nationalist government would adopt this policy on independence, seeing the scientific research into plant medicine as an avenue of original contributions to the pharmaceutical industry. This was an endeavor that underscored the scientific agency of African researchers and the capacity to level the playing field in biochemistry research. I have mentioned earlier how Oku Ampofo's research into herbal medicine in the Kwiapim Mountains came to Nkrumah's attention, who forged a collaboration or partnership between biochemists and indigenous healers to exploit the pharmaceutical potential of Ghana's healing plants. Osio Asare points to the emergence of what she calls an alkaloid group, a group of Ghanaian scientists based at the University of Ghana and the Kumasi College of Technology, tasked with the chemical analysis of medicinal plants. The group included Oku Ampofo, Albert Ni-Taki, the first Ghanaian to obtain a PhD in pharmacology, and W.S. Mensah Dapaah. While some in the alkaloid group like Ampofo were just interested in the chemical properties of medicinal plants and ignored its insertion in a spiritual framework, others like Mensah Dapaah became advocates of the spiritual component of local therapies. Osio Asare cites Kojo Vieta on Mensah Dapaah's conversion experience. Let me quote her. Around 1960, Mensah Dapaah contracted a mysterious illness for which he could not find a cure, either in Ghana or abroad. At his wit's end, Mensah Dapaah finally ended up at the Akonedi Shrine in the eastern region town of Latte, where he was finally cured by the shrine's high priestess, Nana Akua Oparibia, quotation closed. Following this cure, Mensah Dapaah devoted himself to understanding Akonedi and the spiritual practice of Nana Oparibia. Mensah Dapaah's research came to the attention of Nkrumah, who invited Mensah Dapaah and Nana Oparibia to Accra for a meeting. The vision to create the Ghana Psychic and Traditional Healers Association was born during this meeting in 1960. Nkrumah himself had chronic respiratory illness dating back to his years in the United States when he succumbed to pneumonia. During his stay in London, Joe Appiah and Padmore once found Nkrumah bedridden with a bad case of respiratory infection and hastily fetched Dr. Hastings Banda, a member of their intimate circle in London, who provided medical care for Nkrumah. Nana Oparibia, under examination by the Commission of Inquiry into Nkrumah's properties after the coup, testified that Nkrumah approached her for treatment in 1961 for what she described as an acute Nana Oparibia head and chest, cough and sneeze, essentially cold, respiratory illness. She treated Nkrumah with herbs and charged him a fee of £150 or 360 cedis. She said the ex-president paid her £200 or 480 cedis. This is a hefty amount for the treatment of a head cold. Either Nkrumah was very satisfied with the outcome of the treatment, or there was something more to this generous monetary payment. I'll return to this. David Brokenshaw, an anthropologist who worked in Nkrumah, witnessed the launch of the Ghana Psychic and Traditional Healers Association in 1962. The government decided that the launch would take place in Latte. This took place in April 1962, and Brokenshaw, who attended, wrote a description, and I quote him: "The close connection between this association, the Healers Association, and the CPP was stressed from the beginning by the presence of the Minister of Health, the attendance of several of the grand red and white propaganda vans of the CPP, the endorsement of the occasion by the local CPP chairman, and the prominent position of the Kubasi CPP chairman. The Ghana National Research Council, now part of the Academy of Sciences, takes a keen interest in traditional healing. A special department for the examination of herbs has been established at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology at Kumasi, and encouragement is being given to others in this field," quotation closed. Brokenshaw, who conducted his research in Latte between 1960 and 1963, noted that at least 3 cabinet ministers had visited the Akonedi shrine, and the president of Ghana had met the priestess. Nkrumah served as the patron of the Ghana Psychic and Traditional Healing Association, and he went to extraordinary lengths to secure the permission of the Akonedi deity and shrine elders for Nana Oparibia to travel on behalf of the state to organize this association, as apparently the high priestess was not supposed to travel. Osio Asari knows that Nkrumah wanted Nana Oparibia to serve as, I quote, the spiritual guide, a sort of queen mother of the association. Oral histories at Akonedi speak to how this permission was secured. I am dependent here on information by Okomfo Amabwachiwa, an African-American priestess of Esiojebi, a Sentry deity connected to Akonedi, who provided further details from an insider's history of Akonedi and Oparibia. Some of you may be aware that from 1965, African Americans in the US, in search of an authentic African religion, came to Latte to train as priests and priestesses. Okomfo Amabwachiwa is a product of that endeavor. This is her account. So I'm now quoting Okomfo Amabwachiwa. When Nkrumah wanted her, that is Oparibia, to start the Ghana Psychic and Traditional Healers Association in 1962, the shrine said she can't leave the shrine. That was one of the reasons Oparibia did not want to take the high priestess position in 1957, because she knew she had to sit down. She couldn't travel. She couldn't travel anywhere. She could not go in vehicles. The shrine would not allow it. Kwame Nkrumah had to come to the shrine like everybody else. You had to bring sheep, you had to bring drinks, you had to bring money. That was the only way the elders of Akonedi would allow her to travel to Accra for these meetings. So he did. He, that is Nkrumah, came at 3 in the morning, because Akonedi only comes out on Tuesday and Friday, like 2 to 3 a.m. in the morning. She abhors daylight. She does not like daylight. So Nkrumah came. He made the sacrifices. They slaughtered the sheep. And she, referring to Nana Oparibia, had to walk on the blood of the sheep from the house to the vehicle. That was the only way she was allowed to travel. So Nkrumah was the one who facilitated that. This ritual at Akonedi, which required that Nkrumah bring drinks, sheep, and money, may perhaps shed light on the large sum Nkrumah paid for the treatment of a head cold. Emboldened, I asked Okomfo Boachiwa a question the answer to which I felt she might be able to give, to a story I'd heard as a researcher but was not able to substantiate. I asked Okomfo Boachiwa whether Nkrumah had married Nana Oparibia. Her response took me by surprise. Oh, that is common knowledge. Everybody knows that. She continued, at Latte, they say, yes, he was her boyfriend. They don't hide that there. I used marriage in my question, unsure how to phrase my question. Aware that Fatia was Nkrumah's official wife, that they had a monogamous marriage, yet also aware of the many flexible forms of marriage among the Akan. For the Nzima, the anthropologist Grotenelli counts 11 types of marriage, several quite informal. Nana Oparibia herself shed light on her relationship with Nkrumah and the examination by the commission that inquired into Nkrumah's properties. The commission sought to understand not only the large amount paid, which I've referred to, for the treatment of a head cold, but also why Nkrumah had bought Nana Oparibia a Vauxhall car. Let me quote from the commission's record. After that, that is the payment of the £200, Madame Oparibia asked to be provided with a car. It would seem that the doctor-patient relationship soon disappeared because Madame Oparibia testified that Nkrumah then offered to marry her and performed part of the customary marriage rites. We find that a Vauxhall car was then purchased for her, and the payment for this was met from party funds. We are satisfied that the car was purchased with the sum of £800. Madame Oparibia used the car for some time and thereafter sold it for £400 and pocketed the money. Quotation closed. Nana Oparibia offered to repay the cost of the money, of the car. The commission decided that that was in order and she should repay. Let me see if I can get you a photo of Nana Oparibia. You see, she's a beautiful woman. So what drew Nkrumah to Nana Oparibia? That Nana Oparibia was beautiful, enterprising, and successful is without a doubt. Akonedi Shrine in the 1960s had a listed telephone, a motor car, and a postal box. Brokenshire provides us with a personal profile of the High Priestess. I'll quote Brokenshire. The Okomfo is a wealthy woman, owning several lorries and taxis. She has recently built a substantial new house, owns a bar in Latte, and has other business interests elsewhere. This modernity is not seen as incompatible with tradition. Similarly, recourse to Western medicine and hospitals is accepted for ordinary ills, that is, those not caused by witchcraft. Quotation closed. As High Priestess of Akonedi, Nana Oparibia had transformed the image of priesthood in her openness to new directions, like the African-American connection. And she had expanded Akonedi's influence by making it the repository of other deities within Ghana. Families that had turned to Christianity, or for whatever reason did not want to retain family gods and their worship, took these to Akonedi, and in the 1960s and 70s, about 60 deities had been lodged with Akonedi. It had become like a deposit bank for deities. In a sense, both Nana Oparibia and Nkrumah were on similar trajectories, one building a spiritual kingdom, the other a political one. But beyond the practical or the strategic, there was also possible spiritual affinity. With threats on his life, especially after the Kulungugu bomb incident in August 1962, Nkrumah became increasingly paranoid about the loyalty of his inner circle. He confided to his private secretary, Erica Powell, that Kulungugu had left 13 deep shrapnel wounds in his back. Then came the ridiculous security breach on January 2nd, 1964, when within the grounds of Christiansborg Castle, one of the security guards attempted to assassinate Nkrumah. The assassin shot Nkrumah's bodyguard, Salifu Dagati, in the head, but his bullets missed the president. Nkrumah, an exercise fanatic, took off with the assassin in pursuit. Nkrumah easily outran the assassin and then turned to face him and overpowered him. That is before help came. It was Nkrumah who narrated this account to his private secretary, Erica, and Erica left an account of what was clearly a very traumatic moment. I quote Erica, "In spite of Dr. Nkrumah's cries, not a single man came to his aid. It all happened very suddenly. But it was to deal with such surprise attacks that the guards were trained. Were they numbed with shock? Were they cowards? Or were they accomplices?" Quotation closed. We have seen in our two lectures that Nkrumah's spirituality was in flux. In his uncompleted doctoral dissertation in philosophy at the University of Pennsylvania, Nkrumah by 1945 was arguing about the legitimacy and authenticity of Akan spiritual practice, including divination. In 1967, he confided to June Milne, his research assistant, that he no longer believed in any monotheistic God. Rather, he believed in some force, rather like electricity, which was motivated by natural laws. The existence of such a force meant it was knowable by all. No religion had revelatory hegemony. Had Nana Oparibia demonstrated to Nkrumah that she had access to this force? Let me move to a conclusion. I began yesterday's lecture with an epigram from Nkrumah's autobiography, where he referenced his discomfort about coming under the control or influence of women, money, or organized religion. No one on a political mission like his, the liberation and unification of Africa, could afford to take comfort or refuge in women, money, or organized religion. For that first generation of nation builders, politics was a calling, a vocation almost akin to priesthood. It was to be set apart for a higher or larger purpose, and it came with a huge sacrifice or cost. This is seen in the epigram for today's lecture. Blessed are they who are imprisoned for self-government's sake, for theirs is the freedom of the land. From the CPP newspaper, Accra Evening News. Taking what appeared to be a private or personal statement, I have explored the interface between Nkrumah's beliefs and emotions, and his politics, his nationalism, and his Pan-Africanism. We have reviewed the years abroad and Nkrumah's tenure as head of state. In an insightful essay on the import of emotions in African history, Richard Reed has explored the role of emotional and psychological trauma in Shaka the Zulu's violent political and military career in South Africa, and the place of anger and a sense of personal grievance that drove Theodoros to become emperor of Ethiopia, but ended with him committing suicide in 1868. Emotions are powerful and they drive politics. It would be impossible to understand Rwanda today without acknowledging the genocide of 1994 and how it has nurtured an emotional politics in that country and undergirded the authoritarian systems in place. I hope in these two lectures I have demonstrated how much we miss in our understanding of Nkrumah if we focus on examination of his private or his public self only. Nkrumah was very adept at managing his public self, how he wanted to be seen by the public. Nkrumah's relations with women were complex and ambivalent. He worried about losing control, yet his confidants were women. I also believe that his understanding of women was limited. Not that I'm an expert on the subject. His years of penury in the United States may have engendered in Nkrumah a jaundiced sense that he had little to bring to a relationship. But relationships are not just about material transactions. Nkrumah married Fatia Rizik at a quiet ceremony at Christiansborg Castle on December 30th, 1957. Not even his private secretary, Erica Powell, was aware of this impending marriage. Clearly, in Nkrumah's mind, being a prime minister made him an attractive catch, even if there had been no courtship. In Guinea after the coup, Nkrumah was obsessed about a counter-coup that would return him to Ghana. He held on to the hope that he would be returning shortly to Ghana, and Fatia and the kids would join him in Ghana. The result is that Fatia and the children did not see Nkrumah again after the coup. When I visited with Mrs. Andre Sekuturi in 2018, I asked her why Fatia never came to Conakry. Her response was that it was Nkrumah who prevented her, in his conviction that if Fatia visited, she would demand a divorce. Living in Sekuturi's residence as an exile, did Nkrumah believe he had nothing to offer Fatia? But there is a revealing interview that A.B. Asenso, then a young journalist, conducted with Nkrumah in Conakry in late 1966. Asenso asked Nkrumah why Fatia had not visited, and whether it was true that Fatia was seeking a divorce in Egyptian courts. I reproduce Nkrumah's answer in his own words. So this is Nkrumah. I would not elaborate on these personal details, but if you grow to accept my thoughts and study them carefully, you would notice that I have for long held the view that politics does not mix very well with marriage. To some men, marriage is contracted for exigency purposes, while to others, it is a fashion. All that you have mentioned about Fatia is strange to me, and today is the first time of hearing about them. Quotation close. Was this how the idea was sown in Nkrumah's mind that Fatia would demand divorce if she came to Conakry? In a letter to Shirley Graham Du Bois in November 1964, declining the request of a visiting television team to film the first family in the gardens of Flagstaff House, Nkrumah shared his views on marriage, in addition to stressing his position that his family and domestic affairs were strictly private. This is what Nkrumah wrote to Shirley Graham Du Bois. I quote Nkrumah: "My view, and this may jolt you a little, is that marriage does not exist in nature and does not warrant the importance that has come to be attached to it. It is a bourgeois imposition, a mere contrivance set up as a matter of human convenience for the protection of inheritance rights capitalists and property owners. Quotation closed. This is a position taken straight out of Frederick Engels, The Origins of the Family, Private Property, and the State, published in 1884. It may sound ideologically correct, but did Nkrumah really believe this? That Nkrumah was extremely lonely in Conakry is abundantly clear in his numerous letters to his research assistant, June Mill. It is unfortunate that in his regimented, tightly controlled life, he did not allow those who loved him to surprise him. Thank you.
I believe the applause could be done better for our guest speaker. Thank you very much. Let's kindly take our seats. Pretty shortly, we'll begin the second part of today's session, and that will be the special congregation. But before that, Odikro Royals will give us a cultural display. Thank you very much, Ojukwu Royals. Let's do it for them a round of applause. I'd kindly call on the Chancellor and his entourage to assume their seats on stage for the special congregation to commence. Let's welcome him to open the special congregation.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's become part of the tradition in Ghana that when we chair a lecture series, you're supposed to summarize what the speaker said. I always find it offensive, actually, and therefore I don't do it. Offensive for a number of reasons. It means that the lecturer was not clear enough in what he wanted to communicate. Or certainly the audience was not clever enough to pick up what it, and therefore the presumption is that the chairman is so brilliant that he can capture the mood and everything else of the speaker. I won't attempt to do that. I believe you've all enjoyed this lecture, 2 days lecture series, which, as I said, yesterday was most riveting. Today, we had a similar treatment. Very engrossing, and indeed we are privileged to have had this from a very astute and a very eloquent speaker. As I did indicate, the university will confer an honorary degree on our speaker today, in keeping with our tradition. And on this note, and by the powers vested in me as the Chancellor, I constitute this assembly into a special congregation for the purpose of conferment of the honorary degree of Doctor of Letters, Honoris Causa, on Dr. Kwame Emmanuel Kweku Echampong. Thanks for attention.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall rise and take the UCC anthem. Text is on page 32 of the brochure you have. Thank you very much. Help me welcome the Vice Chancellor, Professor Johnson Nyarko Bwampong, to give us his address.
Respected Dr. Sam Jonah, Chancellor of the University of Cape Coast, members of diplomatic corps, former members of the University Council, Professor Rosemond Abuajua Bohin, Pro-Vice Chancellor, University of Cape Coast, Mr. Jephte Emmanuel Onyame, Registrar, University of Cape Coast, Osaberema Kwesi Atta II, Omahin of Ogwa Traditional Council, Nana Kweku Enu III, Mariahin of Ogwa Traditional Area, Nana Amba Ayaba the first, Kronti Hima of Ogwa Traditional Area, Honorable Dr. Kwame Nyarko, MP, Cape Coast North Constituency, former Vice Chancellors of the University of Cape Coast present, former Pro-Vice Chancellors of the University of Cape Coast, Provosts, Deans, Heads of Department and Heads of Administrative Units, Directors of Academic and Directors of Administrative Units, College Registrars and College Finance Officers, Nananom, members of convocation, distinguished invited guests, distinguished awardee, alumni of the University of Cape Coast, friends from the media, staff and students, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is an established tradition in the University of Cape Coast that the speaker for the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Lecture is awarded honorary degree after the lecture. Sir Chancellor, the conferment of honorary degrees to distinguished individuals who have contributed significantly to the well-being of society is not new. This rich tradition has a long history spanning over 500 years. Honorary degrees are conferred on individuals whose lives and achievements serve as examples not only to the awarding institutions, but to the society at large. Sir Chancellor, the recipient of such an award should also have contributed significantly to the cultural, scientific, educational, or social development of his or her society. Individuals who have received such award should have a sustained remarkable reputation which extends beyond the boundaries of the recipient's immediate environment. Sir Chancellor, consistent with global best practices, I'm happy to inform you and all herein gathered that the management of the University of Cape Coast, on behalf of its academic and social community, finds Professor Emmanuel Kweku Echampong, I think I got it right, more qualified by these parameters to receive the degree of Doctor of Letters honoris causa in history. Sir Chancellor, I wish to draw our attention to the fact that the University of Cape Coast's mandate in the collective wisdom of its founders in the 1960s was to champion the training of the country's teaching workforce. Although, with the passage of time and in response to the global trends, we have expanded our programs to accommodate other disciplines. We are still committed to our traditional core mandate, teaching, research, and providing academic leadership within the educational landscape. Sir Chancellor, the conferment of the degree on our astute professor, he becomes an alumnus of the University of Cape Coast. Other past honorary recipients from our university include His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the President of the Republic of Ghana. His Excellency John Agyekum Kufuor, former President of the Republic of Ghana. Professor Jane Nana Opoku Ajiman, former Vice Chancellor of UCC and former Minister of Education. Professor Kwesi Botwe, former Minister of Finance. Professor Patrick Locke Otieno Lumumba. Professor Akilapa Soya, former Vice Chancellor of University of Ghana. His Excellency Benjamin William Mkapa, former President of Tanzania. His Excellency Thabo Mbeki, former President of South Africa. His Grace, the Most Reverend Peter Kwesi Sarpong. Professor Emmanuel Adobin, former Vice Chancellor, University of Cape Coast. Chief Obafemi Awolowo, a distinguished Nigerian statesman. Mr. K.B. Asante, a distinguished Ghanaian diplomat, among others. In all, the university has awarded 51 honorary degrees. Professor Emmanuel Kwaku Echampong becomes the 52nd recipient of the honorary degree from the University of Cape Coast, the University of Competitive Choice. Sir Chancellor, on assuming office as the Vice Chancellor of this noble university, my vision has been to empower UCC students to have entrepreneurial competencies in line with the government policy initiative on National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program intended to reduce graduate unemployment and promote job creation. Sir Chancellor, in May 2021, at a similar ceremony, I pledge our determination to complete all outstanding projects to expand and provide enhanced, conducive academic environment. I am happy to report that we have been able to complete some of the projects, one of which we are using today. Others are ongoing, and new ones have been initiated. We are hopeful that most of these projects would be completed before my tenure of office ends on 31st July 2026. We have asphalted a greater portions of our road network, and we are planting economic as well as ornamental trees and shrubs. Today, the University of Cape Coast is more beautiful in spite of the challenges, a testament of our hard work and commitment to continually improve the university that our predecessors worked hard to bequeath us. The best news is always reserved for for the last, Sir Chancellor. It is noteworthy to inform this August gathering that on Wednesday, 27 September 2023, the Times Higher Education released the 20th edition of the World University Ranking, which constituted the 2024 World University Ranking results. The Times Higher Education World University Ranking is the most prestigious global university rankings among all others. Sir Chancellor, I'm delighted to inform you that the 2024 World Universities Ranking had data submitted from 2,673 institutions across 108 countries, out of which 1,904 universities qualified to be ranked. The University of Cape Coast, the university that you pretend as the Chancellor, has retained its position as the topmost ranked university in Ghana, and West Africa, the 7th on the African continent. Although the methodology was changed this year. The University of Cape Coast is also the only university in Ghana and West Africa that is in the top 10 ranked universities in Africa. UCC has also maintained its position as one of the leading research-intensive universities globally. Sir Chancellor, Professor Emmanuel Champon, the Ellen Gani Professor of History and of African American Studies at Harvard University, has done extremely well in delivering the 13th Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Lecture. Join hands to appreciate him. Professor Echampon, though working in the United States, has contributed in diverse ways in building the capacity of managers of higher education in Ghana. In 2014, he invited many top managers of universities in Ghana to Harvard University for training, of which Pro-Vice Chancellor, the present Pro-Vice Chancellor, and myself, the Vice Chancellor, were beneficiaries. In conclusion, Sir Chancellor, permit me to congratulate the Honorary once again for this feat he has attained. Long live Ghana, long live the University of Cape Coast, the University of Competitive Choice. God bless our homeland Ghana that the first president thought to actually champion the cause of our nation, of which we are all benefiting today, and make this great nation and make the nation great and strong. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Johnson Yakubu, Vice Chancellor of UCC. It is time for the conferment of honorary degree on Professor Emmanuel Echampon. I would invite the Chancellor to lead with the conferment. Professor Emmanuel Ichampong, FGA, Doctor of Letters, Honorary Corsa. Ellen Gurney, Professor of History and of African and African American Studies at Harvard University, Fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, Corresponding Fellow of the Royal Historical Society UK, prodigious academic, role model, experienced historian, prolific writer, Pan-Africanist, religious leader, advocate of conscientism, and passionate Nkrumahist. You were born in Kumasi in 1962 and had your secondary education at the Prempeh College. You then proceeded to the University of Ghana for your BA in History and Religions degree and graduated with a second-class upper division in August 1984. You continued to Wake Forest University, Winston-Salem from 1988 to 1989 to obtain your MA in European History with concentration in English Labor History. While there, you were also the recipient of the Wake Forest University Graduate Fellowship Award. In August 1993, you attained the Pelton-Mate academic qualification by obtaining your PhD in African History from the University of Virginia, Charlottesville. As an outstanding academic, you were a recipient of the Commonwealth Fellowship Award from August 1989 to May 1991. Your academic pursuits also led you to the Andover Newton Theological School from 2011 to 2014, where you obtained your second master's degree, this time in divinity. You were the recipient of 2 awards while there, namely Gabriel Farker Award of Excellence in Constructive Theology 2013 to 2014 and Russell Chase Tuck Biblical Studies Award 2013 to 2014. Professor Ichampong, you were appointed Ellen Gurney Professor of History and of African and African American Studies on July 1st, 2016 at Harvard, and also a Joint Professor of History and African American Studies since July 2003 in the same institution. You were appointed Oppenheimer Faculty Director of the Center for African Studies from July 1st, 2016 to June 30th, 2019, and reappointed on July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2023. You were also a Loeb Harvard College Professor for Distinguished Teaching from July 2005 to June 2010. In your teaching career, you have risen through the ranks by starting as an Assistant Professor of History from August 1993 to June 1997, Associate Professor of History from July 1997 to June 2000, and became a full Professor of History in July 2000. Between July 1998 and June 2000, you were appointed Hugh K. Foster Associate Professor in African Studies. You are a man of many colors, having tasted both secular and religious education. As a testimony of our religious inclinations, you were appointed Minister of Worship and Faith Formation at the Harvard Memorial Church in September 2019. You have received many honors on account of your stewardship and high academic standing, some of which include Commencement Speaker, American International School in Cape Town, June 11th, 2001. Spirituality, Culture and Political Power in Early Independent West Africa, Stephen Ellis Memorial Lecture, African Studies Center, University of Leiden, December 3, 2019. Agri Fraser Gaggersberg Memorial Lectures, March 16th, 2018, University of Ghana, on the theme, Nkrumah and the Making of the Ghanaian Nation State. You were awarded Honorary Doctor of Laws, University of Ghana, in March 2018. Gabe Leap Lecture, Stellenbosch University, October 25, 2017, African Socialism, or The Search for an Indigenous Model of Economic Development. Cornell Distinguished Visiting Professor, Newhouse Center for the Humanities, Wellesley College, Spring 2017. Offered the Rhodes Chair in Race Relations at the University of Oxford, October 2015, but declined. member of International Visitation Committee that reviewed the University of Ghana in 2007, corresponding fellow, Royal Historical Society, United Kingdom, council member of the International African Institute, fellow of Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, member of Jonathan Edwards Society, visiting professor, Bayreuth University, Germany, November 2005. Zora Neale Hurston Fellow, Program in African Studies, Northwestern University, August 1993 to May 1994. In addition to your various honors and plaudits, you have also received fellowships and grants, including Fellow, Stellenbosch Institute of Advanced Studies, January to June 2021. July 2018 to June 2021, Weatherhead Center Research Cluster Grant for Religion and Public Life in Accra, in Africa, I beg your pardon. August 2009 to August 2011, recipient of Weatherhead Center for International Affairs Initiative Grant with Robert Bates, James Robinson, and Nathan Nunn on Understanding African Poverty over the Long Durée. August 2009 to August 2010, recipient of Weatherhead Center for International Affairs Faculty Research Grant for Akan Societies and the Culture of Power in Ghana in the 650th century to recent times. August 2005 to August 2006, recipient of Research Fellowship, Weatherhead Center for International Affairs and the Du Bois Institute, Harvard University. July 2005 to July 2018, Religious Coexistence in Ghana and Senegal, collaborative research project between Michigan State University and Harvard University, funded by the U.S. Department of Education, principal investigator for Harvard and Ghana component. Summer 2004, recipient of Clark Research Grant and Faculty Research Grant from the Center for Population and Development Studies. July 2001 to June 2002, recipient of Research Fellowships, Weatherhead Center for International Affairs, Harvard University, and the Du Bois Center. July 1999 to July 2000, recipient of Research Fellowship, William Milton Foundation, Harvard University Medical School. January 1999 to December 1999, recipient of Clark Research Grant. January 1997 to September 1997, recipient of Research Fellowship, National Endowment for the Humanities. July 1996 to June 1997, recipient of Clark Research Grant. June 1996, recipient of Travel Grant from the American Council of Learned Societies. June 1994 to August 1994, recipient of William Milton Research Grant. August 1992 to May 1993, dissertation fellow, Commonwealth Center for Cultural and Literary Change, University of Virginia. September 1991 to August 1992, doctoral research fellow, African Development Foundation. You have served on several committees in different capacities at Harvard University, where you currently are. You served on the Graduate Admissions Committee, History Department from 2018 to 2019, Chair, Board of Examiners, History Department, 2017 to 18. Planning Committee, African and African American Studies, 2017 to 18. Executive Committee, Hutchins Center, 2016 till date. Executive Committee, Harvard Global Health Institute, 2017 till present. Chair, Fellowships Committee, History Department, 2014 to 15. Planning Committee, African and African American Studies, 2013 to 15. Graduate Admissions Committee, African and African American Studies, 2013 to 16. Graduate Admissions Committee, History Department, 2013 to 14. Chair, Committee on African Studies, July 2000 to 2006. Standing Committee on African Studies, 1993 to date. And Faculty Advisory Board, Center for Population and Development Studies, 2001 to 4. You also serve as executive member of the Du Bois Institute, steering committee member of Weatherhead Center for International Affairs, Executive Committee member of Weatherhead Center for International Affairs, co-chair of the Search Committee for African Anthropologists 2004-5, General Education Committee of the Harvard College Curriculum Review 2003-2004, Chair, History Department Board of Examiners, July 2002 to June 2003, Chair, Search Committee for Assistant Professor in African History 2000-2001, History Department Fellowships Committee 1999-2000, Faculty of Arts and Sciences Graduate Fellowships Committee 1998-1999, and the History Department Board of Examiners 1993-1996. As a prolific academic writer, you have over 100 publications to your credit, including book reviews and short pieces in newspapers and magazines, journal articles and chapters in edited volumes, edited books, a monograph and book publications, as well as conference presentations. You have also had numerous interviews and made several presentations at workshops. Your publications have covered issues on gender and the contribution of African women to economic growth, spirituality, economy, socio-cultural exploration of alcohol and economic growth, lifestyle and image of Africa in the 21st century, religion and religious tolerance, Africans in the diaspora, African history and slave trade, folk environmental wisdom, social history of Bukum, the issue of constructed identity and belongingness, extractive and mining activities, African culture, the relationship between China and Africa, mental illness, and many more areas. From 2012 to 2018, you were director in absentia and co-founder 2006 for the International Institute for the Advanced Study of Cultures, Institutions, and Economic Enterprise at the University of Ghana, and co-founder and president of the African Public Broadcasting Foundation in the US. Professor Emmanuel K. Echampong. The University of Cape Coast salutes you for your meritorious and distinguished service to the nation and the international community, your contribution to the academia and African history, dedication to Pan-Africanist ideals, and your visionary leadership. Ellen Garney, Professor of History and of African and African American Studies at Harvard University. Fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, Corresponding Fellow of the Royal Historic Society UK, prodigious academic, role model, experienced historian, prolific writer, Pan-Africanist, religious leader, advocate of conscientism, and passionate Nkrumahist. Please step forward to receive your degree of Doctor of Letters, Honorary Course.
Osor ebe makusukuku esi. Ogwa esuyapon ayezi form. Esukwan shraba rigu form yo. Anoma apantan shram rekachre ebuborede. Shankom chre ogwa esuyapon. Imbranyum fo. Nyimzefo. Nyame nyimpa kronkron bi abakanya no ho. Ono nyanwana. Mbrekisa otaw ayewom. Kwe mejina mboa mpanyin wepena no ho mfemfem akanza achew abakwasam. Buwofo basayadoma tachrama apimi na yew azechi biara. Obenyina ho few dua na we mu po ya few silprema anyina enyim. Odoma nkoma chrema bi de. Ozi etumpan rebetrenizin ase ama inchamba ete no ho abakosam odoma kuma chrama peja ume otabo ho rekasa odoma kuma chrama abo abrumpo bi na bawdo obrumpo no nyewona obemfo ehuna nyankwa titefo woni kechi enyansafo wona abakan nyansabo akwa obenyina ho feudua net kwapo ya feusi ne busua bi maketesie nanyim nyi owo ozene ho kantamanto Professor Imanoke Achampon Ogwa Esiapande Wama Ayuko Intumi ma wenyim nyampada Wo amfi apem ahankro edokro ebasem Inya wa bakosam abozin military PhD wa University of Virginia wa mfe empem ebien na edu awochum so na University of Ghana bo what about today mbrenyim okunyin military Doctor of Laws. No kwa achre de. Wo hu abozin bro abo ochini hu wiampa. Professor K. Achampon. Jama umbo na ejuma. Mpanyin de. Nyimpa bejizin. Na wambepe onyenchar. No kwa Ajro hu achi wuzin ankasa. Ahwofe egura awoze. Enso nyansa na nyimzi asha wo matam. Osa no nyimzi nti. Wahra nhoma pii. Na watenten binom so. Ma wahra nhoma pii. Professor K. Japan. Achampon. Ogwa Esuapande. Say ye eduaba enche was the waba besie achandachi sa woma me anwowa enche abosin yansape bosha in the pa owohumu na was irene wo o sen wa ho fiewunti say yakobosa ba ye nyanom brodo okunyin ahobrasum peja umwe mawumude nanta bro tobutetia obinfo ahofedua kasa kasa na ogwa esuapan aya krado resay won kranhye enye wa kometoyem ensam obenfo aho febia asasubura adesim odese kasa medawanase mizinaranye na nanyako abronoma anotsewa medawanase.
Thank you. Words cannot express how I feel. And I listened to our mistress of ceremonies. And I was myself speechless at the depth of the narration she provided. Yes, said you track and I said you and I won't him so true. And to hear that, and I'm like, okay. But two things, and I'll just read a short thing that I wrote. I think two things have always motivated. One, having schooled in the US and worked in the US, I've always been eager to let them understand that excellence is in Africa. They may not acknowledge it, they may often ignore it. So in my work, in my scholarship, I have sought to almost let it be in your face that you cannot ignore that excellence is in Africa. The second, I have been a beneficiary of so many, one may say, good turns. An individual will decide, oh, yeah, man, scholarship, no, my baby. So I cannot say that I planned my course. I think the Lord has always had a purpose for what he or she would use me for. And so I have always tended to pay it forward. It may be a plan. And in the end, the sum of things people tell me that you did, and each I do not expecting even for them to acknowledge it. I do because nipa biye punuma. And I think it is fitting whenever I have the opportunity to do likewise. And I've done that without expecting reward. So, now I read the short one. Words cannot express my deepest appreciation of this honor the University of Cape Coast has conferred on me. I extend my sincere gratitude to the Chancellor of this university, Dr. Sir Sam Jonah, to the offices of the Vice Chancellor, Professor Wampong, the Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Bohin, the Registrar, my name, Emmanuel Nyabe, and to this very august institution that I have been a long admirer of. My connection to the UCC began with history, and it has a robust Department of History. I used to visit to confer with historians on projects, beginning with conversations I would have with Professor Divine Amenume when I was working on the history of Anglo. Professor Anume's work shaped my understanding of Anglo and larger Ewe history. I've had good relations with other UCC historians. I used to hang out with Nana, Dr. Koblan Kitsia, Dr. Boedi Siao, and others. I had the pleasure of running into Dr. Kwating, and we were reminiscing over things we used to do in the Historical Society of Ghana. I have mentored young historians from UCC, including Mary Owusu. I hosted Valerie Delalier, Ajo Davo, for a semester as a Wara Fellow at Harvard. I have recruited products of the UCC to work at Harvard Center for African Studies and in our African Languages program. So in a sense, I've long been a UCC person. I've also explored opportunities to build institutional relations with UCC. Professor Wampong referred in 2014, I hosted delegations from West African universities to Harvard to brainstorm about how Harvard could be part of a research consortium of West African University. The delegation included Professor Hoheney, Rosemont, and then Professor Boampo. I have also good friendships at UCC to recall. And I remember when I'll come to do research, I'll go and visit Professor Kojo Opoku-Agyeman, who likes to watch movies from a projector on a wall. And we have impassioned martial arts movies. So we will watch late into the night and talk. The UCC can always count on me as an ally, a resource person, and a bridge builder. So I've become an alumnus, and I look forward in seeing ways in which we can continue to make this institution greater in the years to come. Thank you for the honor.
Thank you very much, Professor Champong. We'll take a musical interlude from Mercy Achiano and Kumsin Barnes.
Searching for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Searching for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Well, leader par excellence, a leader par excellence, a visionary, a unifier, a thinker, a big dreamer. Your words are still relevant, your words are still relevant and meaningful to Africans in this modern era. Sankofa, Sankofa, baby money. Ya basana kafa, ya basana kafa, ya basana kafa, ya basana kafa. Kwame Nkrumah nitemo, we baby money. Na yenya fahuzi trudo, na muntu cry. Searching for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Ghana nye baby man ma umo. Searching for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Searching for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. You are a leader par excellence, a leader par excellence, a visionary, a unifier, a thinker, a big dreamer. Your words are still Sankofa, 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 baby money. Ya besana kafa, ya besana kafa, ya besana kafa, ya besana kafa. Kwame Nkrumah netemupo, we baby money ho. Na yenya fahuzu, fahuzi trodo. To crown. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mercy Achianu. I would invite the Chancellor. Ahead of dissolving this congregation, he would make a presentation. Thank you very much.
We are extremely fortunate that Professor Emmanuel Kwaku, a champion, is using the occasion to formally launch his book, his latest book. And as your Chancellor, even in these hard times, I have to demonstrate a commitment to keeping the university going. So I have bought the first 54 copies to which I do hope the university will make very good use of. These are an excellently written book. They will be at the library, and I hope they will be put to good use. So, on behalf of myself, I'm inviting, yes, Vice Chancellor to collect. Sorry. I was exaggerating the loudness of my voice. Sorry. Independent Africa, the first generation of nation builders. So on my own behalf.
So on behalf of the University of Cape Coast, we'd like to thank our Chancellor for donating the books to us. Chancellor, we assure you that we use it to the benefit of the nation. Thank you.
Now let me express my appreciation to all of you for honoring our invitation to be with us for the last 2 days. It is now my pleasure to declare this assembly dissolved. Safe journey to your respective destination. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Chancellor. I'll call on Reverend Professor Kankam-Boadu to give us the closing prayer. Let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Another humble plea, let us be on our feet. And so, Father, once again, we want to register our appreciation unto you for the great things that you have done. For the 2-day session, we did dedicate ourselves unto you to take absolute control. Father, this is how far you have brought us. You have allowed your Son to speak to us things that will be memorable. We pray, oh Lord, that the insight that we have had in this presentation will be impactful into our life and to help us chart a new journey as we move forward in our nation building. We also appreciate the fact that once again, you have allowed our brother to be part of UCC. Whatever spirit, whatever energy that you have given him, may you help him use it to uplift the image of our university. Above all, Create in us unity of purpose, oneness, to help us uplift UCC as we live in for our various destinations. May your presence go with us. Now the Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up his countenance upon us and give us peace, now and forevermore. Amen.
We shall remain standing for the UCC anthem.
UCC, we are the liveliest of them all. UCC, UCC, we are the teachers of the nation. We learn to teach, we find out and pass on, we counsel, we guide, that all may be enlightened. UCC, UCC, therefore rise to your call. UCC, UCC, to the call, let us rise to our call, let us rise, Veritas nobis lumen. UCC, UCC, therefore rise to your call. UCC, UCC, to the call, let us rise to our call, let us rise, Veritas nobis lumen. UCC, UCC, we are the humblest of them all. UCC, UCC, we are the bedrock of all knowledge. Be proud of this, we students and workers in concert shall work, that your image may be heightened. UCC, UCC, therefore rise to your call. UCC, UCC, to the call, let us rise to our call, let us rise, Veritas nobis lumen. UCC, UCC, therefore rise to your call. UCC, UCC, to the call, let us rise to our call, let us rise, Veritas nobis lumen. UCC, UCC, we are the kindest of them all. UCC, UCC, we are the brainchild of Nkrumah. We train, we mold, and live by his vision to impart our virtues, that Ghana may be strengthened. UCC, UCC, therefore rise to your call. UCC, UCC, to the call, let us rise to our call, let us rise, Veritas nobis lumen. UCC, UCC, therefore rise to your call. UCC, UCC, to the call, let us rise to our call, let us rise, Veritas nobis lumen.
Thank you very much. We'll remain standing as the Chancellor recesses. But before that, kindly note that members of council, all invited guests, members of convocation will have lunch at the Vice Chancellor's Lodge. The rest of us will be treated to lunch here. Thank you very much. We'll remain standing for the Chancellor's recession. Members of convocation, would equally recess.